Hello everyone and welcome to another Navis Nibelite ship overview, and today we are moving into the most unusual class of vessel for the Imperial Navy, the light cruisers. And we're going to begin with one of the two families of light cruiser, specifically the Dauntless cruisers. This is the very first light cruisers that were released by GW for the Imperial Navy. They debuted in the Blue Book, and they have been a staple for the Imperial Navy ever since. The Dauntless light cruiser is a massive departure from the standard fleet modus operandi of the Imperial Navy. The Imperial Navy is always about making a firm phalanx of vessels that move slowly up the field, bombarding the enemy. What the Dauntless light cruisers are meant to do is function as basically filling in the gaps for a lighter, faster vessel that can move along the flanks of the formation and move forward quickly, turn on a dime, and dump a huge amount of firepower into an enemy side while the enemy is also desperately trying to deal with the overwhelming wall of the Imperial Navy vessels that are coming down the center of the board. And to this effect, the Dauntless does this job astoundingly well. Now, another thing that you may notice is that the Dauntlesses resemble the escorts of the Imperial Navy. They look very similar to things like the Sword or the Firestorm. And this is by design. They look like them because they were designed to work with them. They have a very similar turn radius and exactly the same speed as Firestorms and Swords, and they are meant to function alongside those escorts to augment firepower going both ways. Now, we're looking right now at the Dauntless Light Cruiser, and we're going to see there is a new cruiser standard. We have a light cruiser standard here for the stats of the ship. 6 hits is the standard hit for a Imperial light cruiser. Speed, 25, is standard for the Dauntless family. It is not standard for all light cruisers. 90-degree turns, however, is standard for all Imperial light cruisers. 1 shield is similarly standard. Very rarely will you see a light cruiser with more than 1 shield. 5 up armor, similarly standard, and 1 turret. Now, on to firepower. Both versions of the Dauntless have strength 4 weapons batteries, port and starboard. And the variable weapon is the prow. Like all Imperial Navy vessels, they dump the special weapons into the prow. And the standard version of the Dauntless has a strength 3 30-centimeter lance out the front. You may replace it at no additional cost for a strength 6 torpedo. Both of these options are phenomenal. Neither of them is useless unless you're facing against Eldar, in which case you really don't want to bring your lances to the battle because lances are going to be less useful than the torpedoes, simply because you have more dice to roll. So the purpose, as you can probably ascertain, also, one very important thing, all Dauntlesses have improved thrusters, which gives them an additional d6 centimeters and all ahead full, which makes them very, very fast. So as you can see, you are identifying this kind of need to get close and personal with the enemy. But given they only have 1 shield, 1 turret, and 6 hits, they're squishy. They're very easily destroyed by any kind of attention laid upon them by the enemy. And as a result, this particular loadout is good for ambushes, maybe like flying through an asteroid field and dumping firepower into the side of an enemy vessel, or augmenting escorts as they fly and try to keep the enemy occupied on a different front. Using these as your main line of attack will usually result in disaster, though admittedly I have seen double battleship lists that are just filled with light cruisers and 2 battleships, which are absolutely hilarious, by the way, but the effectiveness is questionable because your main firepower is on such a fragile platform. The Dauntless light cruisers are meant to be quick, they are meant to function in wolf packs, and they are meant to attack the flank of the enemy. Nothing is more irritating than suddenly having to deal with two Dauntlesses dumping 12 torpedoes into the port or starboard or rear of a battleship. Suddenly, this 110-point cruiser cripples a 400-point battleship because I wasn't paying attention to them. Now, if you're trying to get rid of these things, your best option is just to dump bombers and torpedoes into them, because they are quite vulnerable to those specific threats. Now, in regards to the effectiveness and the tactics depending on the prow of the vessels, when it comes to reliability, unless you're playing against Eldar, the Lance variant of this vessel is the most reliable, because even when you are braced, you're still shooting 2 lances as opposed to 3. Remember, divide by 2, round up. The torpedo version has greater potential to cause more havoc and a lot more damage, so you have to consider which is more important to you. Remember that your torpedo variant is dependent entirely on reload ordnance, which means having a good leadership on this vessel is critically important. Another fun tactic that you can do with the torpedo version of this vessel is a Berserker Tactic, which is you take, say, 3 of them. And if you get first turn, dump in all ahead full on these vessels, fly across the center of the board, and just shoot 18 torpedoes right down the center at something and force your enemy to react to that. You may lose a couple of light cruisers, but you're going to disrupt the enemy's formation for the rest of the game, if you manage to get a high enough roll. Something to consider. I hope you enjoyed this video. We're moving on to the Endeavor family next.